Welcome back to the Success Blueprint podcast. I'm Morgan Peterson. I'm with my business partner, Jason Greider. Jason, I have some questions for you to dive in a little bit to get to know you.
Okay. Are these prepared questions? Or?
Last 5 minutes, we wrote down some.
It's good.
No, I know you pretty well. So I want you to share your story of from not the very start. We don't have that much time, but back a ways. And so before you and I, partnered, and before let's talk some early years. So let's talk about back in high school. So high school, how was life back in high school? What were you interested in? What were things that you enjoyed?
Yeah, high school for me was, I guess, definitely a different experience than my kids had here. My kids were typically involved in sports and things like that, or climbing or whatever it was that they had interest in. My daughter rode horses and that. But then for my experience, it was all about friends. I did a few sports. I played a little bit of soccer through the early years of high school, and then played golf for high school. But everything just revolved around. I only did those sports because I had friends doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I have no idea. This sounds terrible here because now everyone loves to go to the football games and things like that. But I have no idea if the football team at my high school is good or not. I know a lot of guys that played. I was friends with a lot of them, but I have no idea what their record was.
Did you not attend very many games? Or
I think I went to 2 games, but typically it was to meet friends and go somewhere else. So
okay.
I probably left first quarter. It just wasn't that culture. I grew up in Salt Lake and at Olympus, and I think there were kids that did that for sure, but my group of friends, we did not. Growing up, it was all about skiing. I grew up kind of on the east side of Salt Lake in the Holiday area, and it was all about just getting outside, skiing, mountain biking, whatever we could do to be in the outdoors.
So when you say it was all about friends, why did friends matter so much? Why was that important to you?
I don't know. It's just something that it was a little bit of my escape. My parents were awesome. They were fantastic. I couldn't have been blessed with better parents, but they were. I was the tail end. My siblings were all substantially older than me, and so they were all adults essentially as I was growing up, and all had their own families. And so I always say that instead of having 3 siblings and 2 parents, I just had 5 parents that were all kind of looking after me and making sure I kind of stayed on the right path, I guess. But so that definitely shaped me. But I think friends was kind of an escape, just because I was almost an only child being brought up because they were all out of the house. And so it was really just, I spent a ton of time with a lot of really good friends growing up.
So I know you love to ski. Let's talk about when you skied, what was the season of skiing looking like for you? How much did you ski?
I'd like to skied a lot more. We'd probably get up 20, 30 times a year growing up, and we'd get passes so we grew up of course, in Salt Lake, as you know, you're about a 30-minute drive from 7 different ski resorts. And so we would get up, usually we'd go to either Snowbird, Alta, or Park City at the time. And same group of guys, different group of guys, actually kind of interesting. Summer and winter friends were a little bit different. They mixed, but they're a little bit different because I had a lot of friends in the summer that didn't do a lot of skiing and just didn't enjoy it, or they were on the basketball team or things like that where they couldn't. And so, yeah, it was just, even in junior high school, it was get a bus pass and get up on the resort.
Well, so from high school to, now, as far as you're super driven now and you're very, just business minded and organized. And were you that way in high school? Is that a learned behavior? Were you systematic, back then? Or were you just a ski bum that?
I think I've always been, I've never really liked or done well in chaos, and so I've always liked things to be organized. I think that's kind of been innate in me since I was a little kid. My mom never had to really bug me too much about cleaning up my room and that, just because it wasn't because I wanted a clean room. It was just because I wanted to know where things were.
Right.
You know, I wanted to know if I put this thing here. We didn't have a lot growing up, but like most people, right, at the time, we were just in a small house, and I knew that if I had something, it was something that I paid for, and that I wanted to know. I did not want to lose that item. I did want to always know where it was, so I had a place for it.
Right.
And so it was more of that versus I really wanted to be clean, I think. And so I guess my wife's grateful because I still don't like leave clothes around or things like that, but that's just the way I always was. As far as being driven, I don't know. I was just kind of having, I think that's something that kind of grew over time. I think that was almost out of necessity. I think I was just more of, hey, let's just go hang out, have a fun time. Yeah, I wanted to get better at those things and improve, but it wasn't something that was like a driving force. My wife's kind of complete opposite. She was always driven and always very, very competitive. I hated losing, but I didn't have that competitive spirit like she did.
Right. So, so high school, how did you how was school? Like, did you get good grades? Were you a good student? How would you?
I was an okay student. My grades were actually decent, but I think it was more of just that high school wasn't that difficult versus that I was very smart. I think I took my little backpack with books home maybe 3 or 4 times my whole high school career, stayed in my locker. And so I think it was just more things, testing and that came fairly easy to me. And so like I said, I don't think it was anything that I did, or I wasn't on that side. It's funny because I see my kids and a couple of them, or one was very driven as far as to get good grades and those kind of things and do all the homework and everything. And my other 2 were a little bit more like me, where it wasn't a priority.
Right.
So I got decent grades. I didn't get terrible grades. There was never an issue if I was going to graduate or anything. And so I can't remember what my GPA was, 3, 4, or something like that.
Oh man, my parents would have been so happy.
Yeah. And so, so it wasn't ever, I wasn't on like in all the AP classes or anything like that. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. My dad had worked for the newspaper his whole life. He was a pressman down in the newspaper in Salt Lake for the Tribune and Deseret News down there. So I knew I didn't want to do that because I saw his hours and what he did and things like that. So I knew that's probably not a path I wanted to take, but I didn't know where that was going to take me. And so after high school, I went on a mission, went to Ireland, which was awesome, and then came back and just got into school. Went to Salt Lake Community for a little bit, and then up to the University of Utah for a little while, and just kind of enrolled in school and not really having a direction, but just knowing that, okay, this is kind of the next step. This is what you do.
When you were on your mission, did it nudge you in a path that you wanted to go into, or were you still unsure and wanted to go to school to kind of figure it out?
Yeah, I think most of it was just trying to go to school. I think there I learned to talk to people a little bit. I think what I learned there is just empathy for people, trying to put myself in their position, those kind of things. And so I think that really helped with that. Tons of experiences where, people are it made me realize that everyone's going through tough times. You know, even if they look great on the outside, people, they're struggling with something. And so I think it just gave me a little bit different perspective on meeting and talking to other people. And so when I came back, I probably was a little less judgmental and so I think that helped a ton. Yeah. And I think that kind of led directly into sales. I thought I wanted to go into physical therapy, actually. And so that's why I transferred up to the University of Utah on that. They had a great program. They had just switched it from a bachelor's to a master's degree. So now I was like, 4 years. All of a sudden now it's 6 years. Now it's a doctorate. So up there. So I was like, I'm not sure about that. So I got a job actually at a therapist's office for a year, outpatient therapy office, to see if it was something I really wanted to do, and realized it's not what I wanted to do.
What was your first sales job?
First sales job, I was with Franklin Covey. So it was Franklin Institute at the time. You remember the day planners and those kind of things. And I worked for a team that sold the seminars. So they had a seminar. It was basically a time management seminar They changed it while I was there to I think they called it What Matters Most. I was there for about a year. And it was just, I was on the phones. My area was Washington, D.C., so I basically called companies to try to get them to send their people to seminars. And I found it was pretty easy. I found that if I went down the list of government people, then they always, especially towards the end of their fiscal year, they had money to burn. And so they'd be like, hey, yeah, sure, we'll send everybody to a seminar. And so I was like, okay, I found my little niche. And so I can just sell people those seminars. Then they merged, and then they gave us an opportunity to leave or to stay. And because they had two sales forces, they needed to merge into one, and so they needed about half. And so they said, okay, here's the severance package. If any of you want to take that, let us know. If not, we have to cut people. And so I just went in and said, it's time.
What did you learn from that job?
I think the biggest thing I learned from that job was how important time management is. Of course, going to the seminars, you have to attend a couple. Right. Or when you're trying to sell them, you got to know what you're selling, right? And so they'd sent me to a couple of those, and just knowing that organization of knowing what time management looks like and how much more you can accomplish with it, I think I actually learned quite a bit from there, more than I gave credit to at the time. At the time, I was like, I'm just learning this so I can sell it. Right. But I think some of it stayed with me, and I still do some of those same practices with my, with task lists and things like that, so that I can try to get things done.
Is that something that you feel like you developed from working there or learned from there, or?
Absolutely. I think so. I think the develop side, I don't know if I really utilized it that much there, because, when you're there, you put on your headset and start making calls, and you're just making calls. But I think that's something, just that talking about it to people every day and telling them the benefits of that every day kind of ingrained in me, where I believed it. I really did think, and I do still think it was a great seminar, a great program. And can really help people if they embrace it. Like with anything, right? I mean, people pay big money to go to these seminars and all these lectures, and it only helps if they actually implement some of the things into their own lives. If they go and come home and say that was fun, it doesn't really help them.
One thing that you and I talked about is sometimes you go to those and you try to figure out if it's education or entertainment. And so if you don't implement it, it's more of just the entertainment. And it's funny how we'll like to go and feel like we're getting better. Yeah. But really we're just entertained, and then you move on with your life. And
yeah, that can be an expensive vacation. You could have gone somewhere pretty fun for the same amount of money of some of those seminars. So that's where was kind of my first introduction into sales, and I enjoyed it. Right. I didn't necessarily enjoy being on the phones. I know that you like calling and like being on the phones a lot. Yeah. I didn't love that part of it, but just interacting with people I enjoyed. So nice. I knew that was kind of start of the path that I wanted to go down.
I like it more because I could sit in sweats and nobody knows. So after Franklin Covey, where did you end up?
So I took that severance. It was a little bit unexpected. So I took a quick job just for a few months as I was selling timeshares. Not my favorite job, but I made decent money, actually. I made more there than I did at Franklin Covey. And so I did that just for a few months. I thought, well, I'll just take it for a month or two while I find something else. And I ended up being there, I think, 7-8 months, close to.
Was that in Salt Lake?
It was in Draper. So it wasn't actually at a resort. They just had a little office in Draper, Utah, and it was for Worldmark or Trend West. Mm-hmm. People have heard of that before. And we just showed up at like 3:30 in the afternoon, and they had telemarketers or whatever that would try to set us up appointments. So usually you'd have 2 to 3 appointments a night. You'd have one at 4, one at 6, and one at 8. If you had a full schedule, sometimes you wouldn't be completely full, but you hoped that it was full, because that's the only way you make money. They don't pay you. They only pay you if you sell. And so you're basically, someone comes in because they want a free $100 gift card to Nordstrom, or like a free cruise that they'll never take because it's pretty limited on scope and what you can actually do. Right. But they'd come in for something free, and our job was to sell them. And I think our smallest package was $10,000. So of course we can finance it, and so we had 45 minutes basically to try to get them flipped over, and then a little bit more. You'd have maybe an hour and a half or so, really try to talk them into it.
So how old were you? 23, 24?
So yeah, I was probably 20. What was I? Yeah, I was probably 23 years old when I was doing that. So, and it was good. It was decent. And then I found a job then with Lanier Worldwide. It was selling copiers. Did that for about another year. Well, yeah, about a year. Just a different. I thought it was a step up. I don't know if it really was. I mean, it's probably definitely a step up from selling timeshares, something that I didn't really necessarily believe in or think
Right.
was great. Um, Trying to make it sound financial and sound awesome to these people, but yeah, so it was something that I thought, well, these guys need it. I thought it was a step up more in the corporate world. I thought, well, okay, this is kind of my path. When I was working for the physical therapist, he got us into a surgery just so we knew what we were dealing with when we got out, right? So this happened to be a total knee surgery, and it was a bigger OR. We were able to sit back on the wall and just be like, don't say a word. Just be quiet, stand there, you can observe, don't say a word, don't get in the way, just stay there the whole time, right? And so, but I thought it was pretty cool because when I was there, I saw a couple medical reps, and I was like, what are they doing here? They're just salespeople. And they actually were they had a little laser pointer and they were pointing to different things on the back table to the scrub tech nurse to get ready so the doctor could have everything ready to go for the surgery so the surgery would go more smoothly. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. What's that all about? And so I actually asked one of the guys afterwards, what's that? And he said, well, I'm a medical rep and I'm doing this. And part of our job is to make sure they have the instrumentation they need, and then we can help them with that instrumentation. We can't scrub into the surgery, of course, but we're in the OR a lot. And I thought, well, that kind of intrigued me because it was a little bit health industry like PT, but then it was more sales, which was kind of what I was more comfortable with. And so I thought, well, I kind of want to do that. And so when I started calling around, when I was at the timeshare place, I started calling around any opening, anything I could find for medical sales. And all of them said two things. They said, well, you need to finish your degree and you need to have more sales experience, outside sales experience. And so that's kind of why I got that job at Lanier, selling copiers. I sold Ricoh copiers with Lanier Worldwide, and did pretty well at that. It was kind of funny. I'm surprised they hired me because I told my boss right in the interview, well, what's your goal? You know, they ask you the question, in 5 years, what's your goal? And kind of the right answer is, well, to move up in the company and be the best salesman ever and all
Right.
this. And my is like, in a year or two, I want to be working for a medical sales company. And I want to be successful in this so I can do that. And he says, huh, thanks for being honest. And so I was a little surprised he hired me, but he did. And so he was a great guy. Had some flaws like all of us do, but great
Right.
guy. And so I went on from there. And then, a year later, I got a job in medical sales with a company called Synthes out of Switzerland.
And what was that?
So Synthes, they just sold plates and screws for bone fixation. So they have a craniomaxillofacial side, they have a trauma side, which does orthopedics, and they had a spine division. And I was in the craniomaxillofacial division covering half of Utah at the time. And so we would go into surgeries, and it was fun. It was great. I thought it was pretty neat having, interacting with all the surgeons and that, and really enjoyed it. But after a time, it gets a little old because you're in surgeries all the time, night or day. Sometimes it's middle of the night. You get a call from a smaller hospital that doesn't have necessarily all the equipment they need at 2 a.m. Hey, this person just got in this accident. You need to come and bring your equipment or things like that to the surgery center. And so it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then I switched over. I was there with them for about 6 years. And then I switched over to a company called MTF, which was kind of a sister company that did allograft, which allograft is just human tissue. So it's not like organs, like heart and that, like life-saving tissue, but it's donated tissue from people who have passed that is other tissue. So bone, ligaments, tendon, they call it life-enhancing items. And so that company would take those that were donated. They would actually go ahead and process those. And so you can't charge for the tissue that's donated, of course, but there's a lot on the back end to process it, test it, make sure it's safe, all of those kind of things. And so they do charge for those things.
I see.
And so we'd go in and we would just provide that. So my area has expanded, a few states, started traveling a little bit.
That's cool. So at this time, like, what were you doing when you married Amy and kids started?
Yeah. So I was so it was kind of in that phase where I was kind of transitioning from like timeshare to linear is when I kind of met Amy. We got married, and then started having kids actually pretty quickly. Not planned, but started having kids pretty quickly, as sometimes things happen that way. So,
Right.
we were living in Draper, Utah, and we really enjoyed it. We moved around a little bit within Draper, just different houses. That was, of course, was early 2000s, and so it was kind of like a big upswing, late 90s, early 2000s, and so the markets were increasing, and so it was kind of nice where you could, buy a house, live in it a couple of years, and sell it and make a little bit of money, and then move into the next house to roll over and kind of keep getting that little bit bigger house at the time.
Sure.
So I did that. Ironically, she was in real estate. So she sat a model home for a company down there called Homes. They're still around, still do quite a bit of business. And she really enjoyed it. So when we first got married, she was the agent, and being an agent never crossed my mind. Until I was fast forward to when I was traveling a lot, didn't want to travel as much. We actually moved to Idaho because my area was big enough that I could live anywhere within that area. My wife, being from Idaho Falls, said, "This is a good spot. Let's try it. Let's move up to Idaho Falls and see where we're at." And I said, "Great." Realized, not knowing at the time, but when we moved here, that would have been like 2009, 2010 timeframe. We decided that when we decided that we were going to move up here, I didn't think about it affecting my travel because I didn't realize how small the airport was here. And they've gotten better. They're a lot better now. They have a lot more flights now. But then they had just a few flights a day, 2 or 3 flights a day.
Right.
And so I realized that I was gone typically 2 to 3 days a week, every week, going to wherever nearby states. Not typically, our headquarters was back east, and so I'd have to travel there a few times a year, 5 or 6 times a year. But my weekly travel was obviously just state by state, Denver, Phoenix, Oregon, and that. And so I didn't realize it was kind of going to tack on a day at the beginning and a day at the end almost of every time I traveled. So it went from traveling, from typically from Tuesdays to Thursdays to a lot of times Monday afternoons or so to Fridays.
Right.
And so it switched. And so I did that for about 3-4 years while I was here before I got into real estate.
Okay.
And that's why I did. I loved the job, loved the people I worked with. It was just gone too much. Got tired of traveling and just being on the phone with my kids, right? And so my daughter at the time was kind of getting into, she was really into equestrian and horseback riding, and my son was really into lacrosse and football, my oldest son. My youngest son was just starting some of the little league stuff, and I kind of got tired of being on the phone with them. How'd the game go? Mom sent me a couple pictures. That's great. Those kind of things. And so,
because back then they didn't have like FaceTime, and they didn't have
not as much.
Really.
iPhone came out 2007. So,
Yeah.
And this was a little bit after that. So yeah, they did have some of that, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And so, still, it was just more photos, text to me and things like that. And then I would just call them afterwards. And so I kind of wanted to be there for those things. Right. And so we actually looked at moving back down to Utah, and we were looking at a few places, thinking about moving back down to there just to decrease those days on both sides of my travel. And I had never thought about real estate. And then actually the agent who had helped us, my wife was pretty good friends with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So they were talking, they knew the situation. And so it was Sean Anderson, and he just gave me a call and just said, "Hey, have you ever thought about real estate?" Because we actually contacted him to list our house to move back down to Utah, just to give us a ballpark number. Thought we might be doing it in the next few months. And he's like, "Well, my wife told me you didn't want to move.
Right.
You wanted to stay in Idaho. I love Idaho, so we wanted to stay here." And he said, "Well, just come talk to me." Had no clue about real estate. Didn't know what a buyer's agent was.
Right.
Didn't know any of that. And so I said, "Okay." So I started doing the math, right? He told me what the splits were, everything was, kind of told me what we could do. I started to do the math of what I needed to kind of replace my income. And so, and that was just to replace income. You had to replace income plus insurance and all those kind of things, that benefits that come along with a more traditional sales position, right? Since you're just 1099. And so talked to him, felt okay about it. It took me a few months to really decide what I wanted to do. And so I thought, well, he said he wanted to start this team and wanted to do buyer's agents and listing agents. And that was kind of the Gary Keller way to do things. And I was like, okay, who's Gary Keller? You know, I didn't have a clue as far as real estate goes at the time. And so I started running some math, and I was like, okay, I need to do basically 100 transactions as a buyer's agent to hit my nugget. And said that to Sean. He's like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's go. Let's do it. And little did I know that's not easy to do, right?
Yeah.
To do 100 transactions as a buyer's agent in your first year. And so I remember being somewhere. I think it was down in Arizona. Maybe that's where I met you first. Were you at the Arizona family reunion? That's probably where I first met you. But I was down there. I was only in the business not very long, just a couple months. And we happened to be in the car with this other team that had been doing it for a while. And they're like, hey, yeah, what's your goals? I'm like, I'm just starting. And they're like, oh, what's your goal this year? And I said, I'm a buyer's agent. And I said, I want to do 100 transactions. And they looked at me like I was an idiot.
Right.
They're like, what are you talking about? We have like 20 agents on our team. We've run teams for years. And the best our agents have ever done, like maybe 1 out of 100 agents does like 50 to 60.
Right.
And so the good agents are usually 30 to 40, right? And I was kind of like taken back, like, what am I doing? You know, what have I done? I made this switch and I didn't know. And so anyway, so then I just thought that's one thing that I've typically been able to do, is just kind of put my head down and work when needed, right? And so I just thought, well, I'm in this now.
Did you second guess much? Like when they said that, did you spend a lot of time worrying about, you know what I mean, what they said was possible versus the math that you ran? Or
I did a little bit. I actually got a call from my former company a couple times asking if I wanted to come back within that first year. Well, but yeah, about a year and a half, those calls stopped. But and I think it was just my pride that kept me going. I was like, no, I made this just total decision on myself. When I made the decision, they had kind of kept me on for a little while. I kind of had to hire my replacement, those kind of things. But so I made the decision for myself. I was moving forward, and I didn't want to look back. And so part of it was, you know, they were like, "Oh, I know real estate's hard. Do you want to come back? We want you back." Those kind of things. And part of it was just my pride. Like, I made this decision. I'm going to go forward.
right.
And I'd kind of gotten a little taste of, I mean, obviously you work a lot of hours as an agent, but you do have those moments where I can break away for a game for an hour, or I can break away to see my kids for this time, or I can break away for dinner or things like that.
It's easier to replace it than when
exactly,
in the corporate world.
Yeah, so when you're gone out of town, you can't do that. But when you're in town, yeah, you still might have to show a home or meet with somebody later that night. Mm-hmm. But you can go home for dinner for a couple hours and go meet them at 7 or 8 o'clock,
right?
You know, and still do that. And so I've kind of got a little taste of that and started to enjoy that. And so that's where I was like, no. And then the pride kicks in of, I'm not going to go back to this saying I failed at this, right, you know, at real estate. And so part of it was just that pride in me. I just did not want to admit that I had failed and move forward. And so I just kind of put my head down and just started. At that point, it was only, I think I was in the business about 8-9 months when I hired a showing assistant. I just figured that's the only way I can keep my time and still do more transactions.
Right.
And so I just tried to figure out the most efficient ways to do things. To, one, take care of the client, because that's number one, right? If you don't take care of the client, you won't get repeat business. And then two, to make it as efficient as possible, not only for their time, but also for my time, so that I can keep going and hit the numbers that I needed to hit.
So the numbers that you needed to hit, how did that first year go?
So I fell short. I didn't hit the numbers, but my first year I had 62 sales, which I was totally disappointed and frustrated at. Everybody around me at Keller Williams was kind of patting me on the back and saying, great job and all this, but I was kind of
the only rookie of the year of the whole Northwest region, but not a big deal.
Yeah, so I guess I got a couple little plaques or whatever for rookie of the year for our region, like Seattle or Washington, Oregon, and Idaho and Montana, I guess. I think that's it. But at the same time, I was a little bit, so that was good. And I was like, I guess proud of what I did. But at the same time, I was like, well, I fell short. So what can I do to push that needle, because that's the most important thing is for me at the time was just making sure my family was taken care of.
Right.
And so it just kind of drove me to keep pushing forward. So in hindsight, looking back, I totally got lucky on the assistant that I hired. She was actually working the front desk at Keller Williams, and we were in a little meeting, and I was like, I need to hire an assistant. And somebody said, hey, Megan at the front desk just got her license. I walked out of there, said, hey, do you have a second? Come into our meeting. She came to our meeting, and I offered her a job. I didn't even know her. Didn't even know her. I just said, she got her license, and I offered her a job and got lucked into the fact that she was so awesome. She was smart. She was very good with people, great with follow-up, honest, and she was fantastic. She was really good. So worked with her for a couple years, and then she became an agent, didn't love being an agent on her own, and then went to work for a title company. And so lost her to a title company, so then hired a second one who was also very good. And so I was a buyer's agent for about 4 years,
Right.
And then I switched over to listings.
Right. And how long did you do listings?
So really, I just did listings for a couple years. About a year and a half with the team that I was with before, and then that's when we had met. And so
then I cornered you in a parking lot.
Yeah.
It was a dim, gloomy day.
It was a gloomy day.
Snowing outside. And I cornered you. No, just kidding. What? So we chatted, and I remember that. I also, a side note, that I know you remember this, but we went to when we talked. I was like, hey, I like you, you like me. You want to go to March Madness?
I'm just a guy standing in front of a guy.
You want to go to March Madness? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, let's just go chat for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And we didn't really know each other at all.
No, we literally had a few dinners together, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, the crab cake, eggs Benedict in New Orleans at that conference.
Right.
I think we went back every day that week, but that's as far as I knew you. As far as personally, right. I didn't really know you much.
And so it was one of the most forward, awkward, but yet pretty awesome, trips that I was like, let's just no distractions. Let's just go figure it out and let's just go chat. And so we go and do that. So what was your thoughts? And as far as teaming up, and I guess, we've talked a little bit about it to this day, but we haven't really full circled anything. So what was your thoughts, and what was maybe even some hesitations or, excitements or, things like that?
So at the time, of course, I was on this team that I was pretty happy with. Everything was going fairly well. And then there were some changes that came down where they were merging with another team, and it just wasn't a good fit for me is all. And so, and I knew that, and I think that our initial conversation with the other, I guess, team leader, I was pretty upfront that I said, our first conversation when he told me about the merging, I said, well, it looks like I need to dust off my resume. And he was a little bit surprised by that. I think he envisioned that I'd be excited about the merge. And I stayed on with them for just a couple months, really trying to figure it out, to see what the role really looked like before just leaving. And then it became pretty apparent that it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. And so I was glad to be with them to start with, for sure. I learned a lot. There's a lot of people that I learned from there, which is great in the industry, which helped me get a leg up. I think going your route, it would have taken me a lot longer, because your route, just trying to learn things on your own versus having somebody there to kind of ask questions every day.
It's crazy.
So I think I was grateful for that, to have somebody there to kind of help, just be there for questions. There wasn't really it was just, there's two of us and a couple admin people when we started. And so it wasn't like a big team or anything where they had systems, everything all set up as far as training goes. So most of it was just me bugging the heck out of their admin. What do I do here? What do I do here? What do I do this? How do I fill out this form? Those kind of things to try to figure it out. But they were there for me. And so I was really grateful for that. But then when I decided it wasn't for me, I was just kind of looking around. And of course, when they announced it, I had quite a few calls from local people, just different teams and different agents. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Come talk to me, those kind of things. And I had talked to a few, not very many. I honestly thought I was going to go out just on my own. And then you'd grab me and said, hey, let's just talk about it. Let's just see if it's a good match, you know? And we always had fun hanging out. And then when we went to the March Madness, my wife was like, so you guys don't really know each other. You're staying in the same room? I said, yeah, we're sharing a room, a hotel room. And she's like, well, okay, I guess just go figure it out. And so went down there and it was awesome. I mean, we just kind of planned things out. It was actually pretty long days. Like, as you know, I mean, March Madness, I mean, what is that? 4 games the first day and then 2 games the second day, or day after. So the first day, it was just more just small talk, I think.
Do you remember our amazing tickets that we got? And I felt like I scored big on some tickets.
And we were right by the band.
And they were lower bowl, and I couldn't. I was like, man, these are too good to be true. These are like 12th row. Like, these are going to be awesome. And we're right in the middle of the trombone section.
Yeah, exactly. We were literally, like, the band members were right in front of us.
I just remember thinking, dude, I'm going to have the biggest headache.
Yeah, actually, you have March Madness, you have a band for each school on each side. So, yeah, it was loud, but it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. That day, I think it was just more just getting to know each other. Right. I don't think we even talked business that first day. Second day, like a hotel restaurant or something. I can't remember where we were. Probably just a hotel restaurant, and just talked and kind of hashed out what it could look like if we did partner.
Right.
And then, but it was awesome. So I got home from that trip, and my wife's like, there was one other team that I was kind of considering and talking to a little bit, and they're great people. And my wife just asked me one question. She says, I said, I'm leaning definitely more to one towards the other. And she says, well, my only question is which one we have more fun with. And I said, Morgan, for sure.
100%.
100%. Morgan knows how to have fun. So she's like, do that, because the last few years, the last 5 years or so, you haven't had fun.
Right.
And so
all work, no play.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to hit that mark, right? I was trying to hit that mark. And so she said, you haven't had fun, so go with somebody where you're going to have fun. And she even mentioned that 6 months later, like, yeah, you come home happy instead of just beaten down, you know? So, so definitely a good thing from the very beginning. And I went into it, I really thought it was going to be a good thing. And then you always give me a hard time about saying this, but as we, I think like 6 months or so in, maybe a year in, I don't know, you just said, so how do you think it's going? How do you think this is going?
How it went was, as I sat down and I was stoked, and I said, what's your thoughts? Like, we've gone 6 months, like we haven't, nobody's died, like things are going good.
Yeah.
And then you said,
yeah, I like you better than I thought I would. I meant that. Sometimes I don't think before I say. My wife can attest to that. But I meant was I really thought that we'd get along and we'd have a lot of fun.
Right.
And the fact that was better than I thought was amazing to me at the time. I know it came across as a slight, but I meant it to be a compliment, but it didn't come across that way. But so it was good. And so since then, it's been awesome. It's just been a matter of trying to get the right pieces in the right places. Right. And there's been some misses and some great people that have moved on. And but I'm so excited where our team's at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
the misses, for some reason, make better stories, it seems like.
They do.
We get reminded by, other members of the team about those misses sometimes.
We get a lot of I told you so's.
So before we go into where we are right now with the team, back when you so when you were a buyer's agent and you sold, 60 something homes,
Yeah.
and, I guess what is it that you can, like when agents come on to our team, because you can relate, you've left your job. You've took that risk, you took that leap, you've done all of that. What is something that I feel like that you could offer some advice for somebody else that does the same thing? But then how can you get somebody else to do that kind of business? Because that's pretty awesome. So like, what's the advice that you give them on both of those?
Well, I think starting out, leaving it is hard. I mean, that was a hard decision I had to make, right? Because I didn't have a clue about real estate. I knew people could do well, but I knew looking just a little bit of research that I did, I knew the majority don't.
Right.
And that's still the case, right? I mean, it's still the 80-20 rule holds true, where 20% of the agents sell 80% of the business and 80% of the agents sell 20%.
Right.
And so that's still very true, but I knew that if you just put your head down, you can get to work and get it done. And so that's one thing that I see with people coming up and coming into the business is I know it can be done because I did it, and I'm not doing anything special.
Right.
And I'm not the most, I'm a little bit more of an introvert. And so I'm not necessarily the most like get out there, everybody wants to be and hang around me. That's not me. And so the fact that I'm able to do it, I think anybody can. And so I think it's just a matter of being consistent and making those calls. Not only for me, I did make calls, but as you mentioned before, but I didn't make anywhere near the number of calls that you did.
Right.
My focus was following up. At that time, I was like, okay, the one thing I can do is never miss a time to follow up with people.
Right.
And those two things, the old sales, not tactic, but the old sales rule is if you have somebody that really wants something and you're trying to help them get it, then you never leave a meeting without another reason to follow up or appointment, right? And so every meeting there was something that I was following up with. And my goal was always to beat that deadline. If I said, hey, this is awesome, let me follow up on these items that you want to know about this house, and I'll have these answers to you by tomorrow at noon or whatever,
Right.
whenever I realistically thought I could be there. And then my goal at that point was to beat that. So I could get that information to them either the same night or early the next morning. So it was before noon, right?
Sure.
And so I felt that was kind of my goal on every transaction, is just to try to beat that expectation.
So when you say every transaction, the word that comes to my mind is consistency. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that I think consistent could be your middle name or one of them. And so, I mean, how do you help somebody understand consistency? We've talked about this a lot, but
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things in real estate, because as you get busy, it's easy when you have nothing going on. Well, it's still not necessarily easy, but you can do it if nothing's going on. But when you get busy and other things are taking your time, to truly block out enough time to make those calls is hard.
right.
And so, but if you can do it, that line of growth, I mean, the growth exponential at that point. I mean, I think just that consistency is the difference from someone selling 15 a year to 50 a year, is just being consistent. They can have the same skill set, but the one who's consistent is going to sell 40 to 50, and the one who's not is going to sell 10 to 15.
Right.
And that's really the biggest difference. And some people don't. That's the thing that I've found about real estate, is everyone's goals are different.
Right.
Some people want to do it. They just want to make a little bit every year. They're not necessarily the breadwinner for their family. But then there's a lot of people that are. And we've seen people's lives change because they didn't necessarily come into it with that in mind, but then they ended up being that. And it's kind of changed their mindset and their lives for the good, right?
Well, for sure, 100%. When you talk about the team and like you're happy where it's at, what would you tell somebody who didn't really know about our team or understand our team? Like, why are you happy and excited about it? And then what's your goals and your personal vision of where the team would go?
Yeah, I think the team aspect is kind of interesting. I've never seen it another way. I know many agents, they've been in the industry for a long time. They've been a solo agent forever, and they don't like teams, or they're like, well, they're taking some of your money or things like that. I view it as if you're going to be a good agent, you're going to put money back in the business. And most good agents, according to most people that are researched at like Keller Williams or Gary Keller and NAR and those, they're putting 50 to 60% back in their business anyway, if they're growing and that's their full-time job.
Usually untracked.
Correct. Untracked. So they think they're making this, full amount, but they're really only making about half of that because, that's all their write-offs, right?
Right.
So they tell everybody they make X, but they're really only walking home with about 40% of it.
Sure.
And so I view it as the team can put you so much further ahead, just by their systems, by their processes. You can do business as if you were a bigger business because of that. So bigger business, you can still have the personal touch yourself with your clients and that, but having the backing of something behind you that you can do that you couldn't do on your own.
Right.
A single agent isn't going to do a big client appreciation event that costs them $10,000 or $15,000. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
But when you have a bigger team behind you, you can invite your clients to things like that. Not only to let you reconnect with them and see how they're doing, but also to help promote your business, right? And so there's so many advantages of being a part of a team. And I think we're in a good spot to where we can see, really, as we talked, and our goal from the very beginning has been, we want an environment where people can grow and people can hit the goals that they want to hit.
And not hate Mondays.
Exactly. Yeah, and want to be in the office, right? I love coming in and just seeing everybody in that, and it's fun, and I want it to continue to be like that.
Right.
And so we have been a little bit selective on people who come on the team because we don't want to lose that. But not everybody wants to or is willing to be consistent, I guess.
Right.
Everyone can be. It's just a matter of if that end goal is big enough for them or their why is big enough for them to do it every day.
Right.
But the ones that have that why and do it, they've all been more successful than they thought they were going to be, which is awesome.
Where do you see the team, do you envision, where does that go?
Yeah, I don't know. I know when we've talked about this a little bit, but I know in the past we've talked about how maybe we think about the team going to other areas and things like that, but really I just want to help people grow here too.
Right.
So I think if we can, I don't necessarily worry about if we have the biggest team or the most agents or things like that. I'd like to, because there are some advantages about us being a little bit bigger than we are.
Right.
So if we can grow just a little, maybe double the size that we are, even maybe triple the size we are, which we're not huge right now. So that's not saying a ton, right? So if we get to maybe 15 full-time agents or so, or that range, it just we can add so much back to our clients and to our team members. And so where we will just have the resources then to be able to give them more, right? So I see the advantages of that. And so I see, hopefully, that's kind of the goal right now, is just to get to that point in the next year to 2 years to where we can just give that little extra that we want to. And I think right now we still have tons of resources. We really try to make ourselves available so that we can answer questions or help our team members be successful. But I think just having that a little bit bigger, we can offer even more.
Well, so the podcast being the success blueprint, what would you say in your life has been the blueprint to your success?
I would just say, I would say, first of all, I always look at success as something out that I'm still always working for, right? I definitely don't have everything all figured out. But I think what's helped me get to here is, one, consistency, and two, knowing why I do what I do. Right. And I think that took me a while. I mean, when I switched over to real estate, I was, in my 40s, and that's kind of an old guy time to make a change, right? And so, but because of that perspective that I had from my other job, loving my job, but moving on because, family and that was more important to me. It just gave me a little bit more perspective in this. And so I think if you have perspective in your life, to kind of light that fire and keep that fire going, then that is what helps fuel you to do the things that you know you need to do. to do the hard every day so that you can be successful the next day.
Right.
And I really think that's it. I think it's just doing those things. And from obviously you and I have been to a lot of seminars. We've read a lot of books. And I think when you boil it all down, it's those who are willing to be consistent in that thing that no one else wants to do.
Yeah.
In any industry, right? So if you're willing to be consistent in that one small thing that other people aren't willing to do, you'll get better at it, and then you'll be successful. And so I think it's just finding what that is that's going to move that needle the most and focusing on that and making sure you don't miss a day.
I love that. Well, what, I guess the last question I have, and kind of ripping it off the question you asked me, talk about maybe some of the people that have inspired you throughout the process and why.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that have really helped me out. Obviously, my parents and my brother has been a big influence in my life, my siblings, when I was little growing up, and just seeing how their work ethic really kind of showed me what it looks like and what it should be like. First person that kind of comes to mind outside of that family unit is this guy named Dallin Lovell. He's a physical therapist that I worked for in the outpatient clinic. Just a great guy, hard worker, but he kind of gave me that perspective of if you're taking care of the client the best and most you can do, then they're going to be happy and they're going to come back to you, and then you're going to it's just going to influence even if it's spending a little more time with them and maybe taking away from that day's bottom line, right? But if you do that down the road, it's going to pay off. And so just learning from him, I've run into him a few times when we still lived down in Utah, but I haven't seen him in 15, 20 years. And so he probably doesn't know that, but he's definitely a huge influence. Some of the other people I worked with, of course, and then obviously we don't want to make this a gush or love fest or anything, but yeah, I mean, obviously you. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I learned with you is you can work hard and still have fun. I never really put the two and two together. Before that, it was either work or play, and that's it. Work hard, play hard, and that's it. But I think with you, it's like, hey, if you make work fun, make either whatever you need to do to make that fun, whether it's the people you're with, changing the people you're with, or whatever that is, that those can coincide, and that's a game changer. When you have fun at work, I think and it's enjoyable, then it can really take you to that next level.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and I definitely, have fun with you. One of the funniest things I like to hear from other agents of what other teams say about us is they have too much fun.
Yeah,
and so
that's true. But we did have one agent say that was what made him mad.
Yeah,
he said everyone says you're too fun. We're fun. I was like, well,
not fun enough.
I guess if you have to tell people you're fun, maybe not as fun as you thought.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I look forward to doing this with you, these podcasts, and I look forward to future guests and just kind of see where it goes. And it's going to be super fun. And I appreciate everything, that you've done for me and the team and everything so far. And let's keep that going.
I'm down. Let's do it. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to just learning from other people, right? Because that's the whole goal, is just to try to learn from this. So I'm excited for it.
Perfect, man. Well, let's keep going.
Right on.